Members of the committee, thank you so much for waiting and delaying your committee. It's very important, and I wanted to be here to present it myself, although I know I had 3 or 4 members of this committee that are well capable of handling this legislation. It's near and dear to my heart. It's going to be the first time that our citizens get to vote on an issue that we've always voted on, and that's whether or not Louisiana is pro-life. We are dubbed the #1 pro-life state in this nation. But more importantly, that's because of our legislative actions and our votes. This will show the world and our constituency and those who matter most, those who fight for life, that Louisiana is pro-life holistically, not only its legislators, but its constituency as well. Before I go any further, we have an amendment that's actually drafted. You guys do good work. Yeah. And this is not allowing for any exception. There has been a lot of reports on this legislation, and you know it's going out to the constituency for a vote. And I have to consider that whenever we're passing this, that we have removed in law any exceptions that are currently right now in law to rape and incest. And so this is not giving an exception in Louisiana Constitution. This is just a clarity amendment that I'm asking who's offering? It's one of the committee members to offer that says that we have not removed those exceptions. Just clarity purposes.
Yeah. Senator Martini has a question.
Representative Jackson and Dorinda could probably, I mean, we've both been here around the same time, and I have considered myself a pro-life legislator. But we never get to vote on whether we're pro-life. We always get to vote on how pro-life we are. You know, are you so pro-life you're willing to run the risk of losing Medicaid funds and whatever? But when I was in the House, Senator Nevers had a bill, and I handled it on the House side, where we basically said that if Roe versus Wade is ever repealed or overturned, Louisiana would go with no exceptions. Is that still the law?
That is still the law, and it will remain the law unless the legislature decided to change it at some point.
Right. Well, okay. So
That's what I'm saying. This doesn't impact that.
Right. And then I'm looking at the amendment, and I'm assuming, you know, if this amendment fails, I mean, it doesn't make any difference. It seems to say that we have the right to change, that we as legislators have a right to change the law, which we all know we can't. So my question is there something behind this amendment that is there a reason that this needs to be in the bill? I mean, I'm not opposed to it. I'm just trying to figure out why it's in there.
Okay. The only reason why I'm adding this amendment because there's been some misconception about the bill itself, and that somehow we're changing Louisiana law. As you've stated, this is currently Louisiana law. Mm-hmm. If and when this amendment passes, it's still going to be Louisiana law, and I'm going to let Ms. Bordley go further into it.
That's fine. Okay. I know she knows her stuff, though.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of Bioethics Defense Fund for information purposes only to explain what this legislation does and what this proposed constitutional amendment would do in total. And it's simply this. Here's what it does not do. It does not challenge the current abortion regime of Roe versus Wade, which is the U.S. Supreme Court interpreting the federal Constitution. And where they found, even though the words privacy isn't in there, abortion isn't in there, they found, interpreted through the penumbras and so forth, a right to abortion in 1973. So if Roe versus Wade is reversed, then that would simply mean that they find that the federal Constitution is silent on the matter, and it goes back into the state, into the democratic process. You would think that that's you, and that is you. And in 2006, this body, many of you here, did pass a law saying that if Roe versus Wade is reversed, then abortion would be prohibited, and women and children would be protected from that. Why is this constitutional amendment needed? Well, it's because once it's in the state process and this trigger goes into effect, the first thing the abortion industry would do is to go into state court and ask our state Supreme Court to discover a right to abortion. And so this provision would say, you can look all you want in the state constitution, there's no abortion in here, okay? It closes that door. Why is that needed? It's not speculative. In 13 states now, when Representative Jackson filed this bill, 12 state Supreme Courts had discovered in their state constitutions, without any words indicating that it was there, that there was a state constitutional right to abortion. Just 10 days ago, the pro-life state of Kansas, their Supreme Court struck down a dismemberment ban, a ban on killing living human beings by dismembering them, by finding that there is a state constitutional right in the Kansas Constitution. So this very simple amendment closes the door on judicial activism in the abortion issue in the state of Louisiana and leaves it in the hands of the people through their elected representatives, and of course that's you. The amendment that she's filing today to the constitutional amendment simply puts language in the purpose and intent to say that if there's any questions about whether there will be exceptions of any kind, that is to stay in the hands of the people. And so that would be, come to the committee table right here. Women who are raped deserve to be heard. People who have undergone the trauma of abortion, these women deserve to be heard. It deserves to stay in the democratic process, and that's all this bill and the amendment that's presented would do.
And let me add this, it's clarification, but I want to be clear on Representative Jackson's position. I'm pro-life 100%, from the womb to the tomb, but I know that this has to go out to the voters, and where we need clarification, so someone won't try to twist an issue that's before the voters, then I'm going to give the voters that for clarity purposes. But Senator Nevers' law, which I would have voted on had I been here, will still be in effect for the state of Louisiana.
All right, and we do have a question from Senator Milkovich.
Thank you, Chairman. And I also want to thank Mr. Clapper for his work. Thank you so much. Representative Jackson, I think, and this is just my opinion as a citizen, I think this might be the most significant and monumental piece of legislation that I will have the opportunity to vote for in this term. It's profound in its significance, and I appreciate your comments, Ms. Bartley, that if the so-called federal constitutional right, which appears nowhere in the text of the Constitution, is found to not exist, then we don't want abortionists, the abortion cartel, to find a refuge in the state constitution to continue killing babies for cash and pretending that they're about women's rights when they really got to focus on killing babies and making a profit at it. And I think, again, Representative Jackson, this may be the most important, I feel, piece of legislation that I will have the opportunity to vote for in this term. It ranks up there. I know that Senator Gaddy in 2016 brought a bill that illegalized Planned Parenthood's practice of dismembering babies for sale and profit in research. I thought that was a groundbreaking legislation by our colleague and fellow citizen, Senator Gaddy. And I really feel like this, if it passes, and I hope it does, I think this can be a towering achievement for our state in standing up for our babies. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Senator Milkovich, I honestly think all legislation, what we've authored collectively as a whole, Hoffman, Ward, and any others, has just led up to this point of letting our citizens vote. It's what it is, and I share your sentiments. I've shared Senator Gaddy's sentiments on a billion-dollar industry that stands in the face of many of our constituents and say we're doing it for women's rights when they're doing it for the dollars.
Yep, and I will say this, and if just a moment of personal privilege, I know we need to move on with it. I think it's appropriate to, again, to honor now Senator Martini for his work in defense of the unborn, and I think it's appropriate to look back and acknowledge people like Representative Woody Jenkins, Senator Mike Cross, who worked in this body, and many others. I'm committing the offense of omitting many people, but that have labored to protect our infants. But I do think it's worthwhile to mention now Senator Martini, the late Senator Mike Cross, and former Representative Woody Jenkins, because you're right, there's a lot of people been fighting. Let's see, Sharon Broom,
And listen.
Ben Nevers, thank you.
I remember Senator Broom, and I'm great friends with her, and actually she gave me great comfort. You know, being a black female Democrat who fights for life is not always smiled upon, but Senator Broom had been fighting for years before I got here, and now Senator Barrow, who was then Representative Barrow, and those ladies really brought me in and helped me to understand the advocacy and the importance of it, and why it was keen for us as African American women to fight. I posted an article on my Facebook page to respond to a number of criticisms about this bill with me being an African American female, and I told them, listen, more African American babies die in the womb every year than from any other disease, illness, or violence. If you take everything together that African Americans die from, and you look at the number of African American abortions in the nation, more African American lives are lost every year to abortion than anything else collectively put together. And I said, that's for me as an African American woman worth fighting for. And so, I want to definitely honor them, because they helped me, and they paved the way that when I came as an African American woman, it wasn't unheard of for an African American woman in this chamber to fight for life. And so Senator Broom, who's now Mayor Broom, was a wonderful advocate and remains an advocate, and Senator Barrow, who's now in the Senate, who was a representative then.
Senator Regina Barrow, she must be mentioned as well. Thank you.
And so I just didn't want to leave them out because they were really helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, Senator Gaddy.
Representative Jackson, I too want to thank you for bringing this. This is as Senator Milkovich said, this might be, it is, the most earth-shattering piece of legislation that we're going to vote on. And when you look at other states that are sitting in their committee rooms trying to figure out, can we kill a baby that's a month old, 60 days old? And I'm so proud that our state's moving in the opposite direction, that we are saying, even with Senator Milkovich's bill this year of the heartbeat bill, you know, if there's a detectable heartbeat with modern day technology, then we need to protect that as life. And I do commend you on your stance as an African American Democrat. You brought that up, but I want to tell you, it is comforting to see your leadership on this. And I know you walk by faith, you don't walk by sight, you don't care what people say about you, and you just do the next right thing. And so I commend you on that. And I've grown to really watch the way that you lead on this issue, and you have become a voice for the voiceless. And I know that's why we all run for office and we spend all this time away from our family, is so that we can carry on and be a voice for the voiceless, and it's very powerful here. I also I understand, although I disagree with your amendment in a spiritual setting, as a lawyer, I know why you have to put it on there. And I know that it's a good amendment, and it'll help move this issue forward.
Yes.
So I'm very proud of the hard work that y'all put in, even to thinking about this amendment and the power of it. So I want to move favorable.
And I would really like to work with you guys from now to the floor, that if we feel that it's unnecessary because it doesn't create any exceptions, we'll take it off. But I'd like to work with you guys. But I'm just reading the press, reading the emails, and realizing that that may be something that's a misnomer that will fight against the passage of this amendment by the people.
Yeah, and I appreciate the explanation of it, and really, I'd like to move favorable on the amendment at this time, and
All right.
favorable on the bill
Well,
when the time comes.
And thank you, Senator Gaddy. We'll hold that motion. We still have a few other people that would like to speak in favor, and then we'll hear from the opposition.
Are they speaking on the amendment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I'll offer up the amendment that we've been discussing. Is there any opposition to that amendment? Hearing no opposition, that amendment will be adopted.
Okay. They're calling me back over to the House. This is very reluctant time for me to go, but Representative Pilot in Health and Welfare may need a vote. He has a safe haven bill that we just got to talking about, may save children's lives. There's some opposition to it, so I need to get back and vote on that bill.
Well, look, we'll continue working on this. We appreciate you coming over and making your presentation. But thank you for everything you've done, and we'll.
And I hate to leave, this issue is very important, but
I understand.
we got another
We-
pro-life issue that's sitting on the table in the health and welfare.
I understand that.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Professor Getty.
And they will close on the bill for me. Thank you.
All right. If any, we still have a few other cards that said they would would like to speak or would provide information if necessary. Gene Mills would provide information if necessary. Nathaniel Moore is here to speak. Professor Getty is here to speak. Benjamin Clapper's here. If you'd like to go ahead and say some more words.
Member, Chairman, committee members, thank you so much for your time. We come before you. I'm the director of Ben Clapper of Louisiana Right to Life. We come to support House Bill 425, which we call the Love Life Amendment, which will go before the voters if it clears the Senate by a 2/3 margin, go before the voters on Saturday, October 12th, together with the rest of the state's elections. So this has been brought forward in the backdrop of what Senator Gaddy alluded to has happened in New York and in other places where legislation has been passed or proposed to allow abortion to be legal up until the moment before birth. That has, and we saw celebrations of that in places like New York. This constitutional amendment gives Louisiana a chance to respond to that and to clarify as a people that this state is pro-life, and we want to ensure that there's no right to abortion in our state's constitution. This is a pretty simple constitutional amendment, and that all it's doing is ensuring there is no right to abortion in our state's constitution. As Dorinda mentioned, what happened in Kansas just 10 days ago, where the Supreme Court of Kansas required the state to have a constitutional right to abortion through their interpretation of the state's constitution. And the amendment we brought is really just to make sure that in the process between now and October 12th, that there's clarity here that issues like rape and incest are not issues for this amendment to be dealt with, because this is only ensuring that the Constitution does not have a right to abortion, and then letting the legislature handle the rest of the issues. Senator Martini mentioned the 2006 law. That is somewhat of a partner piece of legislation together with this constitutional amendment that ensures that on the overturn of Roe v. Wade, abortion would be illegal and all unborn babies would be protected in the state. But this also, in the meantime, if that happens one day in the future, but this in the meantime would protect other laws that are being challenged, even laws like our ultrasound laws, parental consent, informed consent laws that we have in the state that pro-abortion groups are challenging in state courts across the country, and we want to protect those laws. Members, we brought petitions from citizens, 8,665 that have been collected just over the past few weeks in support of the Love Life Amendment. Obviously, it's going to need a lot more votes than that to get passed in October. But these petitions, right now they're organized by House district, but we do have the totals for each of your Senate districts, and we will be distributing those in the coming week, assuming we get out of committee today, to show the support of people in this state for this constitutional amendment. We encourage your support of this constitutional amendment, and we look forward to it passing, ensuring that Louisiana loves life and that there's no constitutional right to abortion in this state. Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Hey, good morning. I'm Nate Moore with Louisiana Family Forum, and I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana. Just simply want to echo what these guys are saying and just providing the clarity of what's happening. And as a business owner, and I get to focus on the other side of life. I'm in the child care industry, and I serve, several, over 500 families in the child care industry. So I get to see and witness what life looks like at a very early age, along with what it looks like and the possibility expressed in the community at a later stage. And so I had one personal opportunity where, I cared for a particular individual child that had tough times, growing up at 4 weeks old, distressed and stress conditions. But we took that child home, took that child in, is now properly adopted, and is also now has been awarded some contracts as for on the big stage in California doing, production in movies now at 10 years of age. So I get to see the opportunity of life not only as in the early stages, but also express in the latter end. So, just want to just echo what these guys are saying, just to provide the clarity here that that there is no other rights and no other found things that can be found within the law that can, oppose that law. So Nate Moore with Louisiana Family Forum would ask for a favorable passage. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to finish off reading the cards and support Mr. Charles Carpenter that would have provided information if necessary. Mary Labrie also here in support. Catherine Benfield, Louisiana Family Forum, Rob Tasman, Louisiana Conference of Catholic Bishops, and Lee Landry on behalf of themselves. All right, Professor Getty, would you like to say anything?
I'm just here to answer questions.
Okay.
If anyone has.
All right, we do have some folks here in opposition, if they'd like to come forward to speak, Ms. Ellie Schling, Lakeisha Harris, and Stephanie Bangel.
Way to pull this up. I know. Great. Hello, and thank you for receiving us, senators. My name is Lakeisha Harris. I'm here from Women with a Vision, and I would like to first clarify that I am not part of a cartel. I am a mother, I'm a grandmother, and I'm a concerned community member about access to health care. I want to first start out with a story, and I'll keep it brief. I've supported a young woman from this great state, Louisiana. Her name is Gabrielle. Just 2 weeks ago, she had to seek an abortion outside of this state. It took her months to accrue money that she needed to get an abortion. She had been with her abuser and her partner for 10 years. She had to filter money from his pocket in order to secure an abortion. Abused and battered, she arrived in Chicago with 2 black eyes and fractures in her face. What this amendment does, what it doesn't do, is look at the individual situations for each woman in this state. You all just voted down a measure that would secure housing for 5 more days. So I ask you, what life are you really considering? What is the quality of life when you hinge a person who is surviving abuse to her abuser because she has 1 more child? She has 2 children as it stands. You think she didn't think about everything? She currently is here, back 2 weeks later, fighting for housing, going to 10 agencies, 10, all of them refusing her services. She needs support, she needs help, she needs encouragement. What she don't need is another measure opposing her decision and her way out of a violent situation. Thank you.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Stephanie Bangle. I'm the Volunteer and Outreach Manager with the New Orleans Abortion Fund, which is a nonprofit that, despite our name, serves women across Louisiana. I'm here today to testify against House Bill 425. This bill is harmful, extreme, and insulting to the women that it purports to protect. And to me, it feels like little more than a political maneuver leading up to the election this fall. I'm here today to give my voice to the people whose lives will be negatively impacted by this bill, should it pass. The New Orleans Abortion Fund provides financial assistance to clients who cannot afford the full cost of abortion care here in our state. We work statewide in partnership with local medical providers to offer compassionate and empowering assistance to women seeking abortions and to distribute financial pledges as available to offset the cost of this medical care. We affirm people's rights to control their body and their destinies. And we work to ensure that all people have access to quality medical care, regardless of their economic situation. Laws that restrict access to comprehensive health care, which includes abortion, are most damaging among our most marginalized communities, including low-income women, women of color, rural women, minors, and women who have been abused or assaulted. And these are the voices of our clients. These are the stories that we hear every day on our helpline and at the clinics that we support. Each week, our helpline receives between 30 and 60 calls, sometimes more, from Louisianians who find themselves in moments of crisis. 70% of our clients already have children, They intimately understand the weight of the decision to carry a pregnancy to term and what it means to have and grow a family. Our clients are Louisianians who've made careful considerations and decided to choose abortion. These decisions are made with thought and in consultation with their loved ones, their faith leaders, and their physicians. Our clients, people in Louisiana who choose abortion, come from truly all walks of life and often find themselves in acute need. 2/3 of our clients are employed or students. Some are homeless or housing insecure. Some are college students on their own for the first time. Some are victims of abuse, including rape. Some are raising families and working 2 jobs and recognize that they cannot afford another mouth to feed. And oftentimes, our clients are more than one of these things at the same time. Abortion access is not only an issue of health care. Abortion access is an issue of economic justice. Rather than restricting access to medical care, this legislature should be fostering safe and healthy communities in which families can thrive. This bill is dangerous and insulting. Our clients choose abortion willingly and with much consideration, and it's not exactly easy to get an abortion in Louisiana. HB 425 risks people's health and lives. Research shows that when access to safe and legal abortion is taken away in a community, people will still seek abortions, and they will often resort to self-induced abortions if they're unable to come by the procedure safely. When abortion becomes inaccessible, pregnancy termination becomes a risk. People suffer when restrictions like these are passed, and people in Louisiana will suffer if this bill is passed. In just a few short weeks, the New Orleans Abortion Fund has collected over 200 signatures on a petition against this bill, and we've mobilized another 200 or more members to contact their legislators and this committee. I'd like to introduce into the record this stack of signed petitions from Louisiana citizens who implore you to protect ongoing access to safe and legal abortion. 200 pro-choice Louisianians who want their voices heard here in the legislature. Having the right to access safe, legal abortion creates a society in which its members are truly free. Bodily autonomy is liberation. When a person lacks the right or the ability to control their reproductive health, they lose control over their freedom. HB 425 is one of a suite of bills under consideration this legislative term that threatens that freedom. So please listen to your constituents who support the personal choice to end a pregnancy. Trust your constituents who choose abortion. Trust Louisianians to make thoughtful and responsible choices about their own bodies, and vote no on HB 425.
Good morning. My name is Ellie Schilling, and I'm an attorney who represents reproductive health care providers in the state. As we've discussed, this amendment would enshrine in the state constitution that there is no right to abortion without exceptions. It also targets poor women by enshrining in the Constitution that there can never be any public assistance for low-income women accessing abortion services without exception. Louisiana law already bans state and local funding for abortion services, and Louisiana bans Medicaid coverage for abortion services up to the limits of federal law, which means that the state currently does have a rape and incest exception for Medicaid coverage. But if federal law changes, that exception goes away, and Louisiana does not have a rape and incest exception for Medicaid coverage for low-income women. Federal law currently prevents the state from banning abortions, but as has been discussed, Louisiana has one of the strictest bans on the books in the country, a trigger ban that would immediately take effect if Roe v. Wade was overturned that will ban abortion, including in cases of rape and incest. So there is no reason to enact stronger restrictions under the state constitution because the federal constitution trumps state law, and that is the only reason that those more extreme restrictions have not gone into effect. The Louisiana Constitution has never been interpreted to protect the right to abortion separate and apart from what is guaranteed by the federal Constitution. The problem is that this amendment is such an unusual and unnecessary measure that it is difficult to know how it will be interpreted down the line, whether it will in fact be interpreted to ban abortion in all instances without exception. That's because constitutions are meant to be documents that protect rights. that lay out the rights that people do have, even if those rights have limits. Constitutions are not documents that are drafted in a way to take rights away. So therefore, it is impossible to know how this will be interpreted. There's already been conflicting testimony from the proponents of this bill at the House Committee as to what the amendment will do, and whether legislators such as yourselves really can add exceptions to statutes later, or if this amendment is so broad that it will ban abortions in all instances. It certainly paves the way to do just that, without exception, both in terms of the ability to obtain an abortion and in terms of Medicaid coverage. It paves the way to ban Medicaid coverage, including to save the life of the mother, or to ban abortions, including to save the life of the mother. So if we've heard a lot of talk about letting the voters decide if this is something they're in favor of, if they'd like to make a statement about their pro-life views. Well, let's let the voters decide then if they're in favor of exceptions for rape and incest and to save the life of the mother. Any circumstance in which this would kick in, this bill would kick in, this amendment would kick in and become relevant, then there is no rape and incest exception, either for the ban or for Medicaid under current Louisiana law, if this ever goes into effect. But I bet most voters do not know that. So if we want to see what voters really think, and if they want to enshrine this in the Constitution, then let's see what voters think about these exceptions. We should not be hamstringing future legislators and the will of the people going forward by enshrining this as a constitutional right to begin with and enshrining it without exception. So I would urge you to vote no. But if you are going to pass this and give this to the voters, then we should at least amend this bill to add exceptions for rape and incest and to save the life of the mother and see what the voters think about those exceptions. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any
We
questions
do
that you
have
might
a question from Senator Gaddy.
I want to thank y'all for coming here to testify today. Ma'am, first of all, could you give us your name again?
My name is Lakeisha Harris. I'm the Director of Reproductive Health and Justice at Women with a Vision.
Okay, and Gabrielle came to see you?
Yes,
Are
Gabrielle
you
was.
related to her, or is it
I am
just
not
some-
related to her.
Okay,
She gave me permission to talk on her behalf today. It's as part of my advocacy is called Standing in the Gaps, and that means that you're speaking with permission for a sister that needs your support and help.
okay, and so when she came to you, what types of help did you offer her?
So the help that I offered her was by the way of providing services that were in her area. I live and work in New Orleans. She lives here in Baton Rouge.
Okay, did you offer her?
So I
any-
provided her with a list of services, including the Sheriff's Office, who have VOCA funds, that's Victims Assistance Funds, Victims of Violence Assistance Funds. She has been told to wait, that funding is not available, and wait some more. As she waits, she has 2 little girls who have housing currently, but run the risk of losing that housing because some of the money that she needed to get to Chicago for abortion services.
Well, I want to kind of
which
stop
is-
you right there. I understand that's kind of where you're taking is that
yeah.
she got abused, she needs an abortion, and you're going to help her do that and stand in the gap. My question is, what other options do you give this woman that comes to you who is battered, abused, poor? I mean, there's a
I
lot
give
of
her
other.
a
There's
lot
a lot of
of
other. Okay.
Just as I stated before, I gave her a list of community services that could possibly help her, and she was turned away from those services.
Can you give us the
in
names of
Baton.
those services?
Absolutely. Can you give me a minute to get my phone?
Sure.
Because she
Yes,
listed
ma'am.
them all out for me.
Sure.
While we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and read through the other cards in opposition. Angela Atkins, Louisiana Now. Jennifer Harding, Progressive Social Networking. Jesse
Neoblis.
Neoblis, okay, thank you. New Orleans Abortion Fund. Sarah Tarot, Bobby Moeller, self, on behalf of themselves, Harper C., Louisiana Now, Michelle Ehrenberg, Lift Louisiana, Margaret Sue, NOAF, Brittany Hurt, New Orleans Abortion Fund, Janelle Thomas, on behalf of themselves, Mark Medina, Metro Centers for Community Advocacy, Heather Barrett, Survivors of Domestic Abuse, Billy Lacombe on behalf of themselves, and Rebecca McMillan on behalf of themselves. All right, if y'all would like to move forward.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Chairman.
I'm ready to list those services.
Go
now.
ahead, list them out for me.
Yes. So she has went to the Martin Luther King Center, the social services department over there, where she engaged with a serial blanks for housing assistance. She has went to the VOCA office for the sheriff department, where she spoke with a Miss Reiki Ruffin, and she has been put on a wait list for services there. She has also called, hold on, and she sent me a voice message, which I will allow you to hear in private.
That's fine.
Because it's being recorded, of her conversations with different community organizations. She has also went to, hold on, I'll get the list of services that I gave her. I just got to go up a little further. My text won't let me go up too much further, but there was a whole list, and I can give them to you. She has been to 10 different organizations.
Does she reach out to Volunteers of America or United Way or anybody like that?
Again, yes, United Way is one of the other places that she's given. The state or the city of Baton Rouge has a free services list for people who needs medication, which also Gabrielle has Graves' disease. So free medication. She's contacted everybody on that list and has been turned away. Providers that purport to give medication assistance, providers that purport to give emergency rental assistance. I gave her that list, and she has called everyone, and she has been turned away.
If you just get us that list, you can provide it to the Senate office here, and I'd like to go down that list.
Absolutely. I think you
get to
should
the
go
bottom of
down that list and hold people accountable.
it. And that's exactly why
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, ma'am, thank you for being here today. Could you tell us about how many folks a year you help fund their abortion for them?
Excuse me. It really varies from year to year. Actually, I think I'd have to look at our annual report. I don't have
Is
the
it like
number on me.
2,000, 1,200? Do you know, just with the ballpark figure, do you know?
I can get back to you after I check our numbers. I don't want to put something incorrect into the record.
No, I'm not going to hold you to the number, just like a range of folks.
I'll get back to you on it.
Okay. Is it because I'm trying to figure out, if it's I'm just trying to figure out the data basis for what you said. You said, you help folks fund their abortions.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out how many folks a year do you help?
Like I said, if you give me a moment, I can check our annual
Okay.
report and I can give you more accurate numbers.
Okay.
I don't want to put something incorrect into
All
the
right.
record.
And let me just ask you this, just when you're doing your analysis and you're meeting with these women, when do you tell them it's okay to kill a baby in the womb? Like, what criteria do you use?
That's a pretty loaded question. What we do as an organization is we don't tell people what to do with their pregnancy. We exist as a resource for people who have made the decision to end their pregnancy. So we exist along with a suite of other resources in the state, some of which are more accessible than others, as an option for folks. We do not, stand outside of maternity wards and tell people what to do with themselves. We exist as a resource. People call us when they've made the decision to seek abortions, and we do our best with the resources that we have, which are unfortunately more limited than we're able to provide. We have a lot more folks call us than we're able to fund on any given week. And from that place after they've called us, after they've already made the decision to pursue an abortion, then we work with them to find resources for them to do so.
Do y'all provide any type of counseling from licensed counselors or anything of that nature?
Again, that's not our role.
Okay.
So we work in partnership with the available public abortion clinics in the state, or the clinics that provide abortion in the state, and they have licensed counselors. Everyone who calls us is subject to all of the restrictions that the state has already put forward around abortion, including the mandatory counseling and the waiting period and all of those things.
Do y'all survive by donations, or do you get funding from other places? Do you know?
We are funded through multiple sources, including donations from folks across the state.
Any specific donors that give to you throughout the state? I mean, is it businesses or people, or?
We have a robust base of individual donors, including many individual donors who give quite a small amount because they might not be well-resourced, but they recognize that this is something that's important to other people in the state.
Were you able to look at your annual report on your phone? Is that what you're doing?
I've
or-
been making eye contact with you. Hang on.
Okay. I just wanted to see if you could give me that number.
Okay. So we have assisted folks with, we've made pledges to 1,250 individuals since we began making pledges 7 years ago. Like I said, it really varies from year to year or even from month to month. The need varies even on a weekly basis, and also our available funds vary from week to week and from month to month.
So how would this legislation from Katrina Jackson, Representative Jackson, affect what y'all do?
Any legislation that is passed in this body would affect what we do as it relates to restricting abortion access. We as an organization stand by the right to comprehensive health care in the state, which, as I mentioned, includes abortion. And so any bills that are passed that would restrict access to abortion, make it more difficult, make it, what am I trying to say? Make it such that folks don't realize that they have the right to abortion in the state. One of the biggest questions that we get is abortion legal in Louisiana? Any bill that is passed in this body that restricts access to abortion affects our clients one way or another.
I know you said it affects your clients and their understanding of the law, but how does it affect your corporation?
We're a nonprofit.
Well,
We're
your
pretty
nonprofit
small.
corporation.
Yes.
So how does it affect your nonprofit if the bill were to pass?
That's a great question. Hopefully, I won't have to answer it because we won't have to see this bill pass. We stand by the right to abortion in this state, and we're just watching what happens. I'm not sure that I can answer that in the way that you're looking for.
So it might not affect y'all at all? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, surely any bill that passes will affect us because we exist to serve the clients that we serve. We don't exist for any other reason aside from providing funding to help people access abortions in Louisiana and to protect the clinics that are providing those services.
So do y'all raise money to provide health care for women or simply provide abortion?
We work in partnership with organizations that provide health care. That's not our lane.
Okay, so there's other folks out there that are raising money for sonograms and pap smears and cancer examinations, and that's not your group, correct? You're strictly raising money to bridge the gap to fund abortion, correct?
Exactly. Well put.
Thank you.
All right. The board is clear. Representative Jackson, if you'd like to come and close on your bill. Oh, I'm sorry, for Representative Jackson? Okay. And we'll start you off with a question from Senator Bishop.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Representative
Senator.
Jackson. A couple of questions. This is probably, I guess I've served in this body for the last 8 years or so, and there's been many conversations that we've had with different members about this particular bill. And what I've come to, not just deal with this particular issue, but it's my understanding that reasonable people can differ on this particular piece here. I see a lot of friends from my district and District 4 here in New Orleans that are actually here that are on both sides of this issue. I've talked to many people as it relates to this. The question that I raised a minute ago to staff, and I'm going to raise it to you, this bill does not make any provisions for rape, incest, or for the life of the mother. Was there an attempt on the House side, either in committee or on the floor, to put that amendment on this bill?
Okay, let me, and if I can, Senator, make a correction
Sure.
to your statement respectfully. This bill does not impact right now the exceptions that are in place. But what we did put on in the committee is an amendment clarifying in this committee that this does not at all impact those exceptions that you're talking about. There is a law currently in place in the state of Louisiana under statute that if Roe versus Wade is ever overturned, then Louisiana would not recognize those exceptions. That's already in law. But what we did put is a clarification on this amendment that would still be left up to the legislative body at any time, like any other statute that's in place, to either support that statute or change it.
Okay. And I'll just say what's on my mind, and I'll be very, very, very clear. I've never, no one that I know is what you would consider to be pro-abortion. I hear that term being thrown around a lot around the state of Louisiana, particularly for those individuals who happen to espouse or agree that women should have the right to choose, and they agree with pro-choice. I have a record that's been consistently pro-choice in 8 years that I'm actually here. I represent about 200,000 people in the city of New Orleans. And in doing that, those individuals vary in great detail as to where they stand on this particular piece here. It would be my preference in representing Senate 4 of District 4 that there be an exception in Louisiana state law. Now, I understand how District 4 may seem out of kilter with the rest of the state of Louisiana, but I got elected to represent District 4. And in representing District 4, I want to try and do at least espouse the thoughts of those individuals who live in District 4. The question I was going to raise earlier dealt with the Supremacy Clause, and some of this kind of took me back to constitutional law when I was in law school, because it seems as if we have a state constitution that is subordinate to our national constitution. So when we look at our national constitution, look at the Supreme Court, the laws that they actually have, Roe versus Wade is in fact the law of the land. But it seems as if in many different instances, as most law is, before it's overturned, oftentimes individuals by way of lawsuit and different things attempt to chip away at all of that to the extent that there's only a nugget of what the Supreme Court actually said that we actually hear. And so that's why it makes it difficult. Many of my friends on both sides of the aisle who are either pro-choice or pro-life have concerns about this particular piece here. And I'm concerned that we're attempting to ingrain into the state constitution, it seems to me, necessarily a right that's not afforded both in the national constitution as well as by the National Supreme Court. That is Wesley Bishop's opinion representing District 4. I understand where I am.
Right.
I know the state that I'm in. I understand the committee that I'm on.
And what I'm saying
Yes,
is,
ma'am.
Senator, I think we addressed that because that concern came up in the House, and that's why we had to, and let me read the amendment, 'cause I know a lot of people, it says, the people of Louisiana retain the right through their elected state representatives and state senators to enact, amend, or repeal statutes regarding abortion, including but not limited to circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest or termination of pregnancy to save the life of the mother. That bill, my bill was already in that posture, but because it was a misnomer that it didn't allow the people of the state through its elected representatives and senators to amend the laws and the law that Senator Nevers and others voted on, I put an amendment today onto the bill, onto the constitutional amendment for clarity purposes, that the legislative body, even if this amendment passes the people, still have the right to amend laws concerning those exceptions.
Just saying. I was trying to listen to you, listen to
Okay.
staff at the exact same time. let me do this. Let me pass to Jerry. Jerry has an idea he just mentioned to me that may be in line with what you actually just said. Can you address that?
The proposed amendment is to the purpose clause, I believe, and which is on section 4, pages 8 through 10. And am I correct that the proposed amendment does not address the actual substance of the proposed constitutional
Right.
article itself?
It's for clarification purposes because, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. So my amendment was simply put, I guess, this language here into the purpose clause. And am I? Jerry? Could you?
Your proposed amendment, I would put it into the actual language of the proposed constitution.
So this piece here reads into here. Okay. Representative Jackson, what I'm being told was that this proposed amendment would actually put the language in, this is how it would read, and Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong. To protect human life, nothing in this Constitution shall be construed to secure or protect a right to abortion or require the funding of abortion. This section shall not be construed to restrict the power of the legislature to provide by law regarding abortion, including but not limited to circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest or termination or pregnancy to save the life of the mother. Is that correct?
And I, in drafting this amendment, looked at that. But because we made sure that this constitutional amendment did not trump anything that the federal government did, because we left the ability to change statutes up to the legislature, I put the clarification part in the purpose. Placing it there, of course, attaches this to and makes this amendment language that goes out to the voters have to include it. So that was not something that I, as an author, wished to do.
So you'd be opposed to that?
Yes.
Okay.
But I respect you as a senator that you're going to attempt to add it. Trust me, we are aligned on 99.9% of the things that we do together, and you know how we advocate. So I would not at all see any different from you advocating.
I understand. I'd like to offer the amendment.
All right. So we do have an amendment, and Jerry, if you could, when you get back to your seat, maybe read that off to us again in its entirety so we can fully understand exactly what it does.
Yes, sir. The amendment would be to the bill on page 1 at the end of line 12. It would add the following sentence. This section shall not be construed to restrict the power of the legislature to provide by law regarding abortion, including but not limited to circumstances of pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, or termination of pregnancy to save the life of the mother.
And Representative Jackson, just to clarify with some of the conversation we've already had, you've gone to pretty great extent to make sure that whether it be Roe versus Wade being overturned or any other changes the legislature see necessary to make going forward, that those things that we have some flexibility there. I mean, you've done a lot of homework in trying to
Right.
to make
and
sure
the reason
we
why,
have that
listen, I
flexibility.
totally respect Senator Bishop and what he's trying to do. And the reason why I didn't include it in the ballot language, because then it brings about another misnomer that we're voting on exceptions, which to say Louisiana cannot do. And that's the only reason why it's in the purpose part, because first they said we were voting to take away exceptions if we didn't add it. And then they said if we added it to the purpose part, then it made it clear. But if we add it to the amendment, then Louisianans would be thinking we're voting on exceptions. And that's the only reason I left clean language to the ballot language, so Louisianians would know what we were voting on. So I want to be clear, even with this added, we're not voting on exceptions.
Okay.
Anything done with exceptions would be after Roe versus Wade is overturned and would be properly left up to the statutory provisions that are already in place.
Yeah, Senator Donahue.
So Representative Jackson, are you still opposed to this
Yes,
amendment?
and I was just explaining why, because then it takes out, we've tried to clarify in the purpose what we're voting on, if this goes to the people. Once we put this in the bill, then it makes the misconception that we're now voting on exceptions, which we cannot vote on, which is a legislative priority, and that's why we put it in the purpose, because there's a statute already in place, and that's why we left it up to, at any time Roe versus Wade was overturned, that the representatives and the senators would have an opportunity to author all the bills they wanted to deal with exceptions or the issue of abortion as a whole. And I respect you, please advocate, but that's why.
Object to the amendment.
All right. Senator did send up an amendment to which there is an objection by Senator Donahue. Madam Secretary, if you'd like to call the roll. A yes is in favor of the amendment. A no vote is against the amendment.
Senator Luno?
For the amendment, is your yes vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Senator Bishop? Yes. Senator Donahue? No. Senator Gaddy? No. Senator Martini?
No.
No. Senator Milkovich?
No.
No. It fails 4-2.
All right, that amendment fails. All right, Representative Jackson, if you would like to now close.
I just want to be clear, because there's been so much reporting on this. We are not voting as Louisianians on whether or not abortion is legal. The federal government says it is, but at such time as, but there have been attacks to many state constitutions recognizing a right to abortion in the state's constitution. There's been 3 or 4 cases. We're voting to say there's no right in the Louisiana state's constitution. With the amendment we added, it will still leave up to whatever body is in place, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, the Louisiana legislature to determine what exceptions, if any, will be offered and whether abortions will be allowed in Louisiana. So it still does that.
All right. All right, well, we have a motion from Senator Gaddy to report House Bill 425 favorable. As amended, that's correct. We did put an amendment on to start with. Hearing no objection, that bill will be reported favorably as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.